Guys, we have Rohit as our guest today. Rohit is an engineering leader with TAR Research, and he is currently serving non-compete. He's primarily into embedded systems. A lot of things, a lot of problems and challenges he has solved around fixing the latency and building the core infrastructure for the likes of TAR Research, where they can perform trade in no or real time. Before that, he has been at Logic Fruit and Agilent Technologies, and he has been into the ecosystem for more than a decade now. I think for around 20-25 years now, right? Right, Rohit?
A little more than 20 years. Right.
Yeah. So almost 20 years. And he has been into, I think, so many different roles across different companies and have been serving the ecosystem for a very long time period. And today, what we'll talk about, guys, we'll be talking about embedded softwares, the role of embedded software, embedded systems in the trading ecosystem, the role of latency, and also engineering just in general. Uh, how it has evolved in the last 20 years, and what is the Rohit's take on how it has evolved and how it's going to look like in the next 10 years. Rohit, would you like to add a few lines about yourself before we go ahead with the Q&As?
So, just to let you guys know that electronics has always made me wonder and awe, right, from a very young age, and principles of magnetism and electronics. So, this was something which I was propelled to. And since then, I have been enjoying working around with bits and bytes to see how stuff works. It's very simple. Uh, So that is how it has evolved. And luckily, I would say that for the past 20 years, even though the domains have changed very much rapidly, but the underlying principles have still remained, right? And till date, also, I somehow feel that what you have learned ago, like 20 years ago, also, still the fundamentals remain the same across any industry you go. So for me, I was into a basic device driver guy, and today I'm a part of the financial domain. But if you look at somebody, they will say that how did you move from finance to or to finance, right?
Yeah,
But
I,
but the
I
un
this.
yeah. Yeah, so ultimately it comes down to as the world is evolving, right? I would say that the electronics is driving most of the stuff, right? The underlying current is still electronics, and then the computer science above it. So it does not matter what field you are, the basic thing is same. So earlier we used to use language as an underlying stream wherever you go, language works, and today the underlying stream is bits and bytes, and that basically is electronics in some sense, right? So that undercurrent would still remain the same.
Mhm.
So yes, so earlier the interest started from embedded systems, primarily because at that time owning a computer was a little difficult, and when I was in school and college, right, uh, and very few people had that.
Right, and
And
difficult as well as quite privileged, right, to own a computer or a laptop.
I could recall that in my entire hostel wing, there was one guy who had a computer, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so and and uh, and we used to give special treatment for him at all. And the fun part was that I asked my parents, and they found it very difficult to support one. So in some sense, I realized that not having something also gives you a lot of motivation to work towards itself also, right? Uh, so in some sense, I would say that in the life lessons, there's a very beautiful stuff which I've heard before in Swedish philosophy, that everything you can enjoy is in mediocre, neither too less, not neither too more, neither too much. So that kind of thing, if one is able to keen his interest, that he doesn't go too extreme in his interest and he simply does not live it, then it
Mhm.
would carry out for a very longer time.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so yeah, that was it. So we had this calculators. It was so inspiring. How does this work? And smaller things and microcontrollers. Then you got an opportunity to work upon it. And in my life, when I started, right, I started my career with Wipro, where I was supposed to work on Microsoft DirectX technology in terms of technical line. Why I'm trying to add this point here is ideally because when I was asked to work there, I was not finding it interesting, but still I was working there, right? And my
Okay.
performance was little less, right? Because the
Average.
interest. And then I got an opportunity in a different team in Wipro, right, to work upon, and that was the embedded systems, right? So it gravitated towards me, and I had to take that call where I can move from one team to the other team with a lot of pressure. But I think that I took a right call at that time. So when people say pursuing your passions, right, you should not take it that, okay, you have to leave everything, but sometimes the right opportunity will strike to you, and that time your gut feeling would say, okay, go ahead. It was not that I had to pursue my passion. I left off what I was doing. No, I will only do this and go ahead. So a little bit of patience and everything, it turns out beautifully because you're in a marathon, you're not in a sprint, right?
True, true,
So,
true.
so the passion will find you in some sense, right, if it is true.
Right, and plus, I think it's not always that you really even know that what your passion is. That only comes after you have experimented, you have explored multiple things, right? So it's also a learning process, and passion can really evolve over time. It's not always one thing that you're always. Even if you talk about embedded systems or any one domain in particular, you might be, there might be a driving force towards a certain aspect of embedded systems which you were passionate about maybe 5 years before, and five now it might have changed dramatically. So yeah, makes a
That
lot of.
is right, absolutely. So, if I have to put it from the filter of my experience, right?
Mhm.
So, how I have seen it evolve is that basically, uh, for me, what I'm able to do it effortlessly. So, I did not know, okay, this was my passion, but ideally was that I was able to do it effortlessly. And I continue doing it for a longer time without the fatigue. Right. So sometimes a new board used to come and you have to get it up and running. So I used to sit in nights, also extended nights, and I used to do it. I never used to feel the fatigue of it. Right. So after sometimes, if it starts to get boring, either you have mastered it and then you have to look for the next challenge, right? Or either that is something that you're not very keen on doing, right?
Mhm.
So that is a way of iteration when you try to figure out what your calling is, what your passion is, and then yes, it will change. You will master it. Then you will feel that okay, I have to do something else, and so on and so forth.
Got it. Right, right, right. Makes a lot of sense. So tell me one thing, how has been your journey so far? And like you said, moving to the trading domain, to the financial domain, how did that transition took place? And is this something that you'd want to pursue further, or you'd want to go back and do something else?
So I had been in. I had changed my background. Like after roughly around 15 years of working in non-financial domain, right? And most of the stuff which I've worked earlier on was related to protocols and stuff like that. As I've told you that I had gathered enough information. So the learning graph is like logarithmic graph, right?
Yeah.
Initially, you start with learning a lot, and after that, it kinds of the learning gap decreases, and hits a plateau, right? It is always not a linear one, right? So ideally, it is that when I have totally changed the domain and come here, when I came here, right, I had to start with ground zero. Ground zero means, in some sense, if I have to give an example, I never understood how to properly invest in stocks or mutual fund till 2018. Okay, there used to be an advisor who used to come and talk with me. I said, "ठीक है बे, डाल दो जहाँ डालना है." But so, and imagine that I had little idea about stocks and stock market and not following this, right? And coming into the financial domain, it was a very big change for me, right? But luckily, Tower as a company, right, is more than welcoming and educating. So when I joined Tower, at that time, the new batch of students was starting, uh, being recruited, and so there is a concept of Tower University, wherein
Sure.
whenever new people join, they educate them for 2, 3 months, right?
Mhm.
So I did not attend most of the classes there, to be honest, because most of them were in networking concepts, system level programming. But then there was also this domain knowledge, right? Okay. So I joined as a leader, others leader were teaching it, and I also took a seat with them, and it was a good experience, right? To learn with them, to understand, and then slowly and slowly. So for
Mhm.
and I could see the difference actually. In terms of when you ask about how whether you would like to continue or not. So it is not a domain wherein you make a decision you want to continue or not, right? It is an environment.
Yeah,
Okay.
true, true.
So when I was a fresher, I could see the enthusiasm and a zeal with my colleagues, and I was also fresh. So the environment here of the same zeal and enthusiasm, which I was sitting in the same classroom with other people, learning them, asking questions, and they used to answer. That was wonderful, right? And I see, I have not gone into any other big banking or financial systems, to be pretty honest. But that environment in the HFTs in India is like a pretty young industry right now. And then the zeal and enthusiasm is still there. And I think that, yes, this is something which is difficult for me to find because when I move to any other industry which is not a startup, there are hierarchies and level, and I would be dealing with some people with lot of experience and with a lot of wisdom, but the zeal and enthusiasm percentage would be less, right?
Mhm.
But this environment is something which I like, and I am thriving and enjoying it. So as long as that kind of environment is available, yeah, I would surely like to continue. And still, I have been there in 4 or 5 years, and my learning also it has that scale has not yet flattened out. I would say I still see some at least 5, 6 years of learning there and challenges there to work upon. Minimum. It can be more than that also.
Basically, it's the people, not, that drives how
Yeah.
long you want to,
Correct.
do something. No, that is
Yeah.
true. That is true. That makes a lot of sense. If you, even if you're passionate about something, if you really love doing something, and you don't get right set of people to work with, that passion is going to die, very soon.
Yeah. So it is and so you're surrounded with people who challenge you also, who help you also, right? It is
Yeah.
like you're sitting and solving a puzzle. So at one point you are not able to solve one part of the puzzle, you get an help, but the remaining puzzle you can solve,
Mhm.
right? So that people usually, if they kind of have their experience and then share that, yeah,
Yeah.
it goes a long way. You enjoy that.
Yes. Right. Right. Nice. So, there have been a lot of folks, that want to get into HFT domain, tower research, and the likes of tower research.
Right,
And we know that it's very competitive to get in.
right.
So, what is your suggestion, or what do you think, if someone is aspiring to get in, or someone is aspiring to get into the HFT domain, or do some, let it could be software engineering, it could be anything, engineering. So, what is the suggestion for them? What tower research and the likes of them look for in a candidate when they are hiring the engineers, and how should they go ahead and prepare themselves for the same?
Okay. Okay. So let me start with first step. Why does anybody wants to join the HFT, right? So there are ideally for anyone to join anywhere, right? There are three motivating factors, right? Primarily, one is recognition.
Yeah.
The second is the remuneration, right? And the third one is the kind of respect, right?
Hmm.
Or recognition and respect also I can add. So let me do it like this: recognition, respect, remuneration, and third one is the passion or the kind of enjoyment which you get from doing that kind of the work,
Yeah,
right?
the justification.
Yeah, recreation, right? So if a person is clear, right, where he wants to do, so I'll divide it one by one, right? So first thing is that some people fancy tower research, right? Everyone does. Like when I was small, for me, in the embedded side, if getting into Texas Instrument had a very wonderful office in Bangalore at that time.
Mhm.
When I used to say, "Oh, this is the place to work," right? You have heard about Bell Laboratories. Okay, so this is the place to work. So it was not much about the work, but it was more about the company, right?
Right.
So you join the company, you say tick mark, okay, I've achieved something in life, right? So if that is your motivation, fair enough, right? So you have to try. There are multiple roles in tower research also, right? You can choose which one matches your skill set and where you can outperform the majority of the people, right?
Right. Right.
Okay. The second thing is that, okay, you want to get into the money part, right? And obviously, so when you are trying to get into the money, that is your prime motivating factor. Then in tower research, the quant role or the people who are working on the trading side, right, coming up with the algorithm, that is on premium paying, right, where you have an impact with your work, right?
Yeah.
It's directly proportional. The better you do, the better pay you get. And if you don't do well, there's a high probability that you will not be getting any bonus part, right? And you might be getting it less than what the engineering teams or the infrastructure team does, right? So it is high risk, high reward, right? So for a person, if money is a motivation, irrespective of the company, right, you would be able to make the money if it is in tower or any other high frequency trends, right?
True.
Then if it is an recreation for you, right, because in this kind of a place, the some people uh, are tuned to work in and complex problems, and they don't have the patience to make an 100% perfect product, right?
Mhm.
For example, let me say like a company like Adobe or Microsoft, they release products, right, for the end customer, right, which has to go through a lot of processing testing,
Yeah.
because when we were in embedded systems, when I was working in primarily working with hardware, nothing could go wrong. If something goes wrong, the effect is higher. So after some times, the work used to be 20 percentage, but the rest of the thing used to be 50, 60 percentage, right? Uh, and this cycles of continuous, and it used to take a longer time to the market, right? But HFT is the most shortest time into the market. You can experiment your ideas and you can be working on variety of them and get it rolling. So this
Yeah.
will always give you a kick, and this will always keep you high, to be very honest, right?
Yes.
And
Adrenaline rush, I think that is associated because the kind of scale and the kind of other mission criticality that you're working on,
mm,
it will always give you that kind of high. Makes
right,
sense. Yeah.
right. And the other part is here is that if the time to attain that kind of an reliance from the company that okay, you have written the code now, put it into production, right? The time period can be as short as 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the other industry, before the production, you have to have a lot of sign-offs. So here you work initially, people see how you're making your decisions, how good your quality of code is, and are you able to take a decision. So after 6 months, there's a high probability that, okay, you can come up with a product as soon as you join, right? And they say, okay, go ahead. You can deploy it, right? With one or two code reviews and job is done,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that kindles your confidence level very high, right? And what happens is then you feel that the layers which were put into the normal companies, oh, you have to do this, then that, and that, it is all gone, disappeared. So you really work in a startup kind of a culture, right?
Mhm.
Where you are a rebellion in some sense. You say that, okay, these are all some layers which people have put in terms of insecurities that their job has to be in place. But here I'm able to bypass everything. So this
Yeah.
is a very normalized playing field. So a person who has there been a long and a person who's been short and he has earned the respect of his peers and the company can perform it, right? So why I'm asking you to decide in these three, because what usually happens is that when people join HFT, right, then it is not that the roles which you get inside the firm, right, will be able to satisfy all the three of them at one single place, right? You have joined and you think you want to make money, but you are in an infrastructure team, you still will make a decent amount of money, but your comparison with that will not be there, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
quant guys, the algo guys will be making. So make a decision. You want to go into quant, go into quant. If not tower, then there are other firms. Be clear that you want to get into quant and try it out, right? You want to say, no, I have to work on variety of stuff. I have to learn, right? I have to try high performance computing. I have to do low latency development. I have to work on some kind of an data analysis, right? These fields are there. You can go around and play, right? Okay. And
Mhm.
since you are moving from one area to the other area to the other area, it is quite possible that you will not be able to be a master of one, and maybe you are enjoying it, but recognition part would not be coming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Have
Okay.
to pick one basically.
Yeah. Pick one. After that, see, life is a marathon, right?
Yeah.
So enjoy your delicacies one by one instead of them mixing everything together, right? You take your time, enjoy it, get satisfied, then move on to the next part, and so on and so forth, right? And I told you the first part, right? Respect and recognition. Within 6 months, you will be able to get that, right? If I have to compare this field, at least HFT, not the other banking side of it, right? So it is a very flat startup kind of an organization, right? There is no differences. Everybody's ideas are welcome. And when people get in, there is a big barrier because you're not only judged on your skills, right? So what I say skills is a simple thing like programming skills. You have C++, you have Python or Java. These are skills, right? Second thing is your talent, problem solving ability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So people and try to match both of them, right? So it is not that, right? A person can pick up the skills. Today, these skills are there. Tomorrow, new set of skills.
True, true, right, right. I think talent should be there, right? So
Right.
focusing more on that side, problem solving ability.
Right.
Yeah.
And then how do you so what happens is that the problem levels are the same. The more the problems you are able to solve at the given point of time, right? Okay, so that much amount of differentiation you would be able to generate.
Mm-hmm.
So, so how does Tower kind of, or the companies in the likes of Tower, they don't want to take risk because there are not a huge number of people joining, right? It is a flat organization, so there are not levels of hierarchy or
Right, right.
superior setting in. So it is not that if you have a bad hire or an average person, the manager will come and see or will work with you and make the product successful. So everybody has to be a star performer, right?
Everyone is an individual owner, right? They have to
Correct.
have that very high ownership.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, so then talent is there, then comes the attitude part, right? It is not that nobody is going to spoon feed you and say, they will put you, they'll not say you what to do, because they think that it is obvious, right?
Mm.
So there's a problem statement, you work upon it. Oh, if you're not working, then mean you're not liking it. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, that was the case because I was coming from a plan where we had this, okay, this is a project which we are going to do.
Mm-hmm.
This part, this is the design, we all discuss upon, we all agree, and then we develop. Here it was totally different. There is no concept of designing or anything. See, there is a problem. You pick up a problem, right? Are you able to solve the problem? Are you finding it interesting? Solve it. Okay. And as I told you, right, there is no perfect solution. So the problem would not have a perfect solution, but if it works under the given scenario, that is good enough, right, for you to
Right.
continue doing it. Which will hit you strongly if you're coming from a background where you appreciate quality work, right?
Yeah.
So that cultural shift is required for not for the youngsters who are joining, but for the experienced people who are there.
They
They
already
should
come
be
with baggage as well, right? So it's difficult for them to adapt, I guess.
exactly. So for them, they have to see it. It is like how do you define quality? So in one of my uh, earlier days, like one person told that quality is something uh, which is not given to you, but you define your own quality, right?
Mm,
And how should I? What example was given that you say that this will work in this kind of scenarios and stuff like that. You define the parameter, right? Okay, and you say that it will work. For example, I'm making a solution. You say that this solution is not universal, but in this given scenario, it will work like this. This is an expected behavior.
got it. Yeah.
Okay. So if you sit and design that, okay, I'm going to design something. So I'll give you another example. You are doing a house shifting, right? So you
Mm,
have to shift your, let's say for clothes from point A to point B. Uh, the requirement can come to you saying that we need a device to shift clothes from house A to house B. So for one person, he can just take a cardboard box, put in the clothes there and
mm,
move it, right?
yeah. Yeah.
But an engineer always tries to overcomplex things by saying that, okay, if I'm carrying this, it has to be durable. The water should not go in there, right? I will design a suitcase and then suitcase with wheels, maybe it is able to bear. So you end up designing the suitcase, it will take a longer time and you could have done the job with just a cardboard box. So that is where the talent and attitude and decision making comes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why most of the people from IITs get hired here is very simple. They don't, this is what my analysis is, that working with IITians and non-IITians, that one thing is that for them, they understand this subtle difference, right? How to get the job done of what is required. If it is
Mm-hmm.
a 1 mark question, don't spend so much of time, right? Try to figure out what options out of these four options doesn't work, and right, your thing is to get the right answer, not the right way or something like that, right?
True.
So the faster you do, so what happens is there are so many issues which keeps on coming. So these people, they don't want to understand the entire concept before getting their hands dirty inside the code. So in
Mm,
HFT, as for us, you are able to focus on a narrow thing. You don't have to spend a lot of, I have to understand this, how the entire spectrum works, and then only I will go ahead and code. No. This is a problem. Pick up a cardboard box, put in your luggage. The job is done.
get
Focus
it
on the
done.
next,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
next. Yeah.
Right. And I think something that I very strongly believe that the toughest job of an engineer is not to over engineer stuff, which most of them end up doing. Right. So if they have to build a solution for 1,000 people, they would want to devise it for a million user base.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. And yeah, I'm also to blame. So when I used to think in the mind, it used to be a perfect solution. Okay. Think
Right.
about all the complex things and work. Because that gives you some kind of a nice feeling, right? When you are sitting relaxed, you are thinking, I used to do it, thinking about logic. Okay, how can you design? Because you used to feel pride in that, but that
Mhm.
attitude has to change. That instead of you feeling the pride in that solution, right?
The job
uh,
done.
get the job done and let other people
Right.
say how it is going on.
But I have seen a lot of instances where, some of these engineers and some of these engineers were from a very good pedigree. They end up over engineering stuff, and the only case that they maybe missed catering is the one that they were actually supposed to solve. And everything everything else is covered, but you get so obsessed. So the whole idea is don't get too obsessed with what you are doing, right? Just get the job done.
It is not a research work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a business, and you have
Exactly.
to. Right.
Right, right. True. I have a very interesting question from one of the guy from our community, right? So what he wanted to understand, what's the role of HFT, because basically the values fluctuate every milliseconds, correct? And maybe the quantum may be lower than that as well, right? So does it also impact the value of the stocks for the retail traders?
Yes, absolutely it does that, right? The entire purpose of, let's forget about HFTs. Let's consider a normal HFTs is only subsection of what this entire thing I have to
Yeah.
say, right? Marketplace. So there's a marketplace, right? Let's examine that you have to trade something, right? So
Mm.
how does the trading part work, right? The trading part is more successful when there is an ability to liquidate stuff easily, right? Okay. Suppose you are buying a property in NCR, right?
Mhm.
You don't have to worry that you can sell off the property immediately, right? It's only the matter is how sooner or later it will sell is based upon your pricing.
Yeah, true.
If you buy the same property, let me say in Leh or Ladakh, right? Even if your pricing is right, it is very difficult that you will be able to sell your property, right?
Right.
Okay, if it is a smaller property, yes, but if it is a bigger property, it becomes more and more difficult. The property just lying for ages and generations, right? So, similarly, when we look at the stock market, it's the same thing. You should have a liquidity, right? And what happens is that there are two kinds of liquidity players. One who are buying your stocks, and other people who are willing to sell. Suppose I
Yeah.
want to buy, somebody has to sell.
Correct, correct, right.
Let's say that a stock is doing very good, Reliance. Nobody wants to sell Reliance, right?
Mhm.
Then they say that, yeah, there's nobody to sell Reliance. I'm not able to buy. Okay. So then the transaction does not happen. There's no liquidity, right? And the reverse ways, somebody doesn't want to buy only because the stock is going down, right?
Yeah.
And
There are a lot
then
of
how
people.
do, right? So it started that how do we make this volatile, liquid? That was a key factor. So many bank or many institutions started to come. They became market makers. They said that, okay, we will take the risk and we will buy it. Okay, I know it is going down, but we'll still buy it. I know
Mhm.
I'll be making a loss, but my role is so. Okay, now when this started, right, what happened was that how did they start making money? That is through the brokerage.
Yeah,
So
right.
you, whenever you buy, you sell, you pay a brokerage charge, right? And
Right.
then it goes to the exchange, and then the exchange says, see, you are taking the risk, I'm paying you.
Mhm.
Okay. A small amount of that, right? So when people thought that, they figured out a mathematical uh, equations in such a way that they could see that how can they minimize their losses and risks. It is not zero, but how can they minimize? Minimizing is being 51 percentage right. That is all. You
Right.
can be wrong 49 percentage time,
Mhm. True,
right?
true.
So that is how it started, right? But what happened was that for these, initially people used to do these calculations and then make a call of buying. There used to be still a lot of delay. It used to take minutes or hours or even days. Somebody puts in that said, okay, we'll buy at this cost and we'll sell, right? Because it was all human.
Yeah.
Then later on, the machines came in and everything came in. Things started to get faster and faster and faster, right? So now when you do that, the at the end of the thing, the equations are the same across
Mhm.
everywhere most of the time, right? Now what difference happens is that how fast you are able to make that
Do that.
link, right? So
That
that is
transaction.
where the high frequency trading came in, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the entire point. So how, so you have to look at the high frequency. How does it affect retail? It obviously affects the retail. Why? Because
Mhm.
this is so frequent that for you, from a retail point of view, for you to see the differences or fluctuations in price,
You don't
right?
even get to notice that. You don't even know that something has happened by the time it reaches you, right? So
Right.
doesn't this have an unfair disadvantage for the retail traders?
So let me put it this way. If you're buying a Reliance share, okay,
Mhm.
and holding it for 1 year,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there are these intraday traders, retail
Mm-hmm.
traders. Okay, you have bought an ELSS, tax savings, some bond, right? You have locked
Yeah,
it.
yeah, right.
And these retail traders are trading every day. And now you are not in a situation to liquidate that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2 days, you don't notice it at the end of the day trading, right? So would you say that the retail traders have an unfair advantage when compared to the people who are holding the stock for a longer time?
Mm-hmm.
What usually you have to see is that their strategy will not be affected by these fluctuations intraday because it will all settle down. One day it might go up, the other day it might come down, but the end of a period of, let's say, 1 month or 2 months time, this would not have made any difference to them.
Yeah. No, for I think for the long-term investors it might not, but for the intraday one it might.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
now the people who are doing this intraday, what do? They have to pay premium for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they say that, okay, we are going to give you more brokerage for buying. We have certain options, we elevated, we have this technology at our end, right? And person who's simply investing in SIP doesn't want to take so much of risk, right? So it is that if you are getting a premium, you're paying for it, right? And
Yeah.
in that sense, there is no restriction for a retail trader or anybody that he
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. He can obviously pay the premium and he can get the services he needs,
Yeah.
right? So when you say about this, whether it is unfair in that sense, nothing is unfair. How much premium are you willing to pay, and how much risk are you willing to take?
True. No, that is true. Makes sense. Makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
Also, I think my next topic that I would want to discuss with you is around latency, not just in terms of embedded systems or the HFT, but in general. So I would want to, we'll talk about it in two aspects. One, from a major, I would say, from early stage startups. We have a lot of early stage entrepreneur friends who are probably listening to this or will be listening to this, right? And initially, typically, people don't focus on latency, which at a later stage, when you grow to a million DAU, that becomes your core, I would say, parameter or core metric to look at. So, what are your thoughts on that?
So there is one great saying, and I don't know who has mentioned it, but
Mm-hmm.
you can buy your way out of bandwidth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But latency is divine. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So the thing is that, yeah, if your users are increasing, you can keep money and keep on buying bandwidth. Okay, 10 Gbps, 100 Gbps, etc.
But until
But
when?
until how much ever you want, right?
Yeah.
They're providing. But if you have to focus on the latency part, you have to have either a game changer that after so many users we are going to re-architect stuff altogether, or you given thought from the initial stages only that how you are planning to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are companies, I would say, like for example, you must have heard of PCI
Yeah.
bus,
Yeah.
right? This fifth generation, sixth generation are coming, and why are they coming? It's just reducing the latency and increasing the bandwidth. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All these distributed systems, all these caches and latencies. So I'll give you another idea. You can
Mm-hmm.
buy how much of a storage space you require, right? Okay. But in the processor, the cache, how if you're trying to slowly increase the cache size, let's say from 32 KB or 30 to 64 one, it is going to cost you multiple times.
Yeah.
The cache is used to reduce your latency, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some sense, right? And that is in terms of just one cycle, 3 cycles, 5 cycles, kind of stuff like
Yeah.
that. So again, as I told you, right? So if you have a smaller user base, you design a cardboard box, get your proof of concept ready, get your initial customers where latency is not playing. And meanwhile, if you're predicting that they are going to grow, have an different set of an architecture in place.
I have a plan B and basically have, parallelly build a different architecture or something around those lines.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your, what is your some stories, some nice stories around latency, which has been, I would say, a nightmare or would have been a huge challenge for you? And how did you solve that?
Okay, so I'll give you a different angle of latency here. Okay,
Yeah.
so it is not in nanoseconds or microseconds, but interesting part is that you will be surprised to know that the NSC,
Mm-hmm.
the amount of data which we get in National Stock Exchange is pretty
Mm-hmm.
huge.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
the sometimes it is not the amount of data which is coming from the exchange, but as a company, when you're trying to store the data, right? I have seen at least it compensating 40 percentage of the uh, entire company's data which we are storing.
Okay.
Okay, only 40% from a company like who trades in 100 plus exchanges and so on.
Mm-hmm.
40 percentage is NSE, right? And what happens is that this kind of data, when you do, so the trading ends at, let's say, 3:30 p.m., right? And next day trading starts at, let's say, 9 a.m. For ease of thing, we would say 4 p.m. it ends and 9 p.m. it starts.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference of this time period, which is roughly around 17 hours, right? You have to process all this data. You have to give all this data to somebody who really needs this data, and then they have to process this data from their perspective and get ready for something which they are planning to do before
Yeah.
9 a.m. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is also a latency. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How do you plan to do this? How do you plan to solve this issue was a major thing. So there are multiple ways, right? Either you try to you try to buy a huge bandwidth line, right? And this data has to be encrypted and then sent over undersea cables, right? And you pay a lot. Or you end up buying a lot of servers which can process the data parallelly and then use a smaller network and then send it across, right? And or else you try to move some of the processing which are located remotely to this system, right? So what happens is that these are not sustainable solutions, because tomorrow the NSS data might increase more.
Mm-hmm.
Then your cost will also increase, right? And at the end of the day, your profitability will decrease. So this is where engineers work to resolve on this problem, right?
Okay.
How
Yeah.
do you address this without increasing the cost? Okay, reducing the time, right? In some sense, okay, and also keeping the credibility of the data. Credibility of the data, it means that when you're transferring, something happens in between and the data is distorted in some sense, right? Taking care of. So this is a nice engineering problem which you can work upon, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the other part is that you are not a decision maker. You have to work with at least 3 or 4 teams spread across geography. How do you end up solving this problem, right? Okay. So I would not be able to give you out the solution, but it is an interesting problem. You can think that if you were there, how would you have approached this and solved this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one example I can give you is compression of the data, right? Okay, now here I can give you examples that how much pain we had taken to identify based upon the data what kind of compression logic would fit well. Okay,
Okay.
you
Okay.
can't simply use any kind of a compression. What kind of compression logic would fit well, right? What kind of multi-threading can you do to overcome the problems while sending an non okay, so instead of to lack the better words how to explain this, and how do you overcome the TCP limitation while sending the data from one point to point B, right? How you can further optimize it, right?
Yeah.
So you can't. So what is that? You have to sit and do the calculations here. How the TCP works and how do you understand how it is working there at your end? You can't go and write your own TCP stack, but understand the behavior and then try to work around that behavior. So at the end of the day, it feels like you have speeded up the entire TCP But in the end, it is just that you have redesigned or re-engineered
Yes,
certain
you have
stuff.
just used it in a better way. You have just,
Right.
utilized it in the right way.
Right. Yeah.
Right, right.
So this the point what I'm trying to say here is that instead of simply looking at the problem that okay, how do we do it in the standard way, you have to dedicate a lot of time in measuring each and every nuances of it. And after the measurement, once you have the data, think about how you can reduce the data also, right? Brainstorming session is required. So this is where I would say that my thought approach has totally changed when I used to work for Agilent.
Mm,
Agilent as a company only thrives on one simple logo. It is that if you can't measure, you can't improve, right?
that is true, right? Yes.
It is a measurement company, right? And makes devices to measure stuff. Okay. So absolutely, if a company is thriving it, you can't let go of that ideology. You have to measure, you have to think about it, and don't sit up and designing solutions which would fit in all the scenarios and you create a white paper and go. In this particular scenario, your solution should work reliably. That is
Yeah,
all. I'm giving you one idea about how the HFT industry works. Now,
yeah.
you can't take the solution and make it that, okay, I will use a similar kind of a solution for 10,000 DAUs or
No,
something like
obviously,
that.
obviously, right. Again, then we get into that, over engineering or over complexing stuff. So
All right,
making things over
exactly.
complex. Yeah, yeah. Right. Nice, nice. Great, great, Rohit. Rohit, anything that you'd want to, since we are just about, we are just about running end of the time.
Yeah.
So, you have anything for the folks, anything for the engineers, the last topic that you'd want to focus on, who want to grow up the engineering leadership, who want to step up or right up the, the ladder of the engineering and get into the
Yeah.
engineering leadership or the people management role. What do you tell to them?
Okay, see, a leader first has to be satisfied. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two things, right? A leader has to be hungry and a leader has to be satisfied. There are two different approaches. Okay. How should one take it up, right? When they are calling them as a
So
leader.
both quite counterintuitive though,
Count,
hungry
right.
and satisfied.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. So, so as a leader, right, one of the major criterias should be that it is that he has to be satisfied in terms of recognition. He has to be satisfied in terms of his career growth in some sense, right? He has to be hungry to be able to part his experiences as knowledge to the next set of team members learning there, right? Okay. How should I give you an example in some sense? You must have seen the bird, right? Pelican, for example. Okay.
Yeah.
So it has a beak and then it has a sag below its beak, right? Where it can go catch the fish and then it can take the fish and feed its baby birds. So in
Right.
some sense, see, it is satisfied. It has eaten the fishes within its stomach is full, but it is still hungry that it is able to accommodate more fishes in it. But the
Mm-hmm.
purpose of that being is to feed the rest of the people, right?
Yeah.
And then to grow. So see, you don't have to become a leader, right? So leader is fascinated, and only leaders don't run this world. Okay, followers are very important. Okay, and there is a concept of being the first follower, right? I'm not
Mhm.
sure if you've heard of it. A leader is only a leader when he has a follower.
That is
Okay,
true.
and there is a concept of this first follower. Till you get a first follower, you are not a leader, right? Okay, and I will say you one more interesting fact that the rest of the followers don't follow the leader. Nobody follows the leader.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody follows the first follower.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's an
so
interesting take. Okay.
so try to become the first follower, right? First, before you become a leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly and suddenly you would not realize that you would have a first follower, and that is when you have become a leader. Okay, so in that sense, get satisfied that you don't want to become a leader, and be hungry that you want to be a first follower.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it might be little bit counterintuitive, but the idea is that slowly you start, and then people, when they see you as a follower, growing into a leader, that is when you have become a true leader. You can't simply become a
Right.
leader from.
And I think you can't try too hard to become a leader. So basically, I very strongly believe that either you are a leader or you are not a leader, irrespective of what your designation is or what you are doing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and it is not fancy also. See, people say that you become a leader. So, leader is not that you are a leader for the entirety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is based upon the situation.
Yeah.
In that situation, you are confident, there is an intuition, there is a conviction which says that you can do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some situations, it would happen that you would find that some other person is a better
Yeah.
position to lead that particular situation. So that kind of an flexibility should also be there, right?
Right. And for that, leaders also need to be very secure, right? Only then they can hand
That
over
is,
the. Yes,
yeah. So that is where the satisfaction comes in.
exactly. Right.
So if you are satisfied, see who is secured, who is satisfied, who doesn't expect anything, right?
Yeah. Right.
From that point of thing.
Who
So,
doesn't feel threatened with
right.
everyone. They are confident, they are satisfied with themselves, that yeah, it's okay, I am who I am, and doesn't really matter if someone is going to take my place or be a leader for that moment or for some time.
And see, it is also that you can't be in the state of this entire of insecurity for a long time, right?
Mhm.
It will drain you out. So being insecure is a part of the human, it will be there, but how do you channelize it, right? So I'll give you, when I joined Tower, I felt insecure because when I went there, everything was different, right? And but when I noticed people surrounding you, right, they were okay, and they were more than welcoming, saying that we are willing to help you out. And I knew that they were judging me also, but they were willing to help me out also. Okay. So that level of insecurity is there, where the insecurity is used for your self growth.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. This insecurity, so it is a concept, right? You get satisfied and then you feel insecure. You see that whether are you able to get any value of the insecurity by your self development.
Mhm.
Okay. If you're liking it, if you're enjoying it. If your insecurity holds on for 6 months of time, it is okay, right? But after more than if it is there for a longer time, it is not good for you and for your health, first of all. Then it is
Right.
not good for the company also. Then you start thinking that how you can go. And you can always talk to your boss or your leaders saying that, see, this I'm feeling insecure kind of and my decision making process is getting impacted because there is some biases which I have. And trust me, in most of the cases, right, people who are sensible in today's environment will welcome it and see how they can feel you more safe and comfortable, try to address your challenges, right? And also and I'll give you my example in simple sense. See, I am leaving Tower because of one of my main reasons, which I've not told anybody within the company, is that I knew that people under me are doing the job without me also.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
Okay.
that's a sign of a very good leader, right? When your team can perform and they can do stuff, and when you have grown leaders internally.
So when I go in and ask that, can I get more responsibility? First step
Mhm.
is that, because I know that yeah, people would be able to take up the responsibility and do it, right? And when in some sense you see that in one environment at that particular time frame, you don't see that okay, you might be able to get more responsibilities, right? And
Mhm.
then you feel that the person below you might and they also feel that yeah, I'll be able to do right, and they might also start looking outside, right?
Yeah,
That will
yeah.
decide. But see, then what happens is that when I left, the respect of the team is there, right? And the next person who had been my first follower, now who has grown up, the other people have also seen him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for him, the people under my team who were not listening to him or who are not doing very well, I would say, but now they have seen him grow, their attitude have changed. Now they are listening to him. Okay.
Okay.
So when the first follower becomes a leader, it is quite possible that the people whom you were not able to lead as a leader, he is able to do a better job.
Yeah.
Okay. They see, they learn. Okay. And I am pretty confident that this guy, when he feels that the rest of the people are capable, he will also make the move to uplift them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the place where I'm going, I'm also getting a better opportunity than this, right? Where there is a similar kind of a problem statement that needs to be solved. Things might come, things might not come. I'm not saying that everybody has to do it. Be your own judge, right? And when you are in that company, also layoffs happen, right? You take it, right, with a pinch of salt and you keep on working. So treat it
Mhm.
also in a similar kind of a manner. Okay.
Got it. No, that's nice. Nice. I think it will help a lot of people to understand the true meaning of leadership and what real leaders do.
I
So I
would, if you want, right, I'll just, in the terms of leadership, I'll just add one thing
yes,
that
yes, absolutely.
there is Western philosophy and there is an Indian philosophy of doing things, right?
Mhm.
I am more inclined towards the Indian philosophy. Okay.
Okay. What are
But
these Western and Indian philosophies? Even I want to know this.
yeah, see, Western philosophy is like they write books about the corporate jungle and stuff like that,
Okay.
right? Where you have to thrive, you have to learn the art of doing all this stuff and going in, right? Indian philosophy is more about giving. So there is this Katha Upanishad, okay, right, in which there is a person called Nachiketa who
Mm-hmm.
goes and asks the Lord Yam, the Lord of Death,
Yeah.
that teach me the art to go to heaven. So
Mm-hmm.
there is an process which is called as Agni Yagna or something process. I
Okay.
don't know. He says it, and Nachiketa, the follower, whatever the verses are coming, he repeats it so
Mm-hmm.
beautifully that the Lord of Yama gets so impressed on the student. He says that this process henceforth will call as Nachiketa Yagna. Right. So there is nowhere the master's name is being put anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Indian philosophy focuses on the knowledge and how you pass on this knowledge. Now, Western philosophy, whoever has invented it, even though if his team has done the work, the credit goes to the manager or to the leader.
Yeah.
And that is where the concept of leadership is so exaggerated. In India, that is why they removed no, leader is bullshit. Okay, we will talk about our followers, we will
Yeah.
encourage them. Okay, so this Western philosophy, if you are working in a Western culture, absolutely follow that because that is how you have to thrive there. But if you are building your own startup in India, right, follow the follower principle, right? Name everything on the person who is working at the ground level, who has come up saying that you have done this job very well. My thing was to guide you, but the guidance you have taken up beautifully and done it, it has to be named after you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, makes a lot of sense actually. Yeah, when you think about it, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And that process will continue. So as a company, this is how it will grow. So when do you decide that the teaching has gone to a person properly? How do you know that what you have taught, the other person has understood it? So the concept is person one teaches to the second person.
Yeah.
Okay. The second person is able to teach to the third person. Only then the first person can say that I have taught the second person.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Right.
How intact, the knowledge has been when it has
Reach the
gone
third person.
multiple layers.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this parampara or this has to continue. This is the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
for the young people and for the startup people who are doing there, right? I only hope and sincerely wish them that they would be, if they are able to follow this, right, they can do wonders, right? And
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, if you talk about the Western philosophy of leadership, people are not very content, right? There is a lot of complaints and there are a lot of, I would say, grudges between the leaders or the managers and their mentees, right? When the folks think that someone else is taking up the entire credit, so it doesn't help anyone, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
So a leader has to be satisfied. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, Rohit. So I think we are out of time.
Sure.
And thank you so much, Rohit, for this amazing session. It was really insightful. It was really insightful for me. So I'm very sure it was super insightful for our viewers as well. Thank you
Yeah.
again for taking this time on a Sunday afternoon. Really,
Yeah.
really appreciate.
Yeah, wonderful. So I've also gained these experiences from my bosses and leaders and the people who have worked. I would like to pass on these thanks to them as well. Right.
Nice.
And it has
Thank
come
you.
to you and the rest of the people.
You're
Wonderful.
being very humble, but yeah, really appreciate.
Okay, great. Thank you. Have a nice day.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Rohit. Have a nice rest of the Sunday.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you too.
Bye-bye.